Hello everyone, my name is Holly Martinez, and for my presentation today, I'd like to talk about juvenile offenders in the U.S. criminal justice system, especially discussion regarding diversion programs as an alternative route to mitigating delinquency in adolescents. So how do we currently view children in the criminal justice system? According to the United Nations Convention of the Rights of the Child that occurred in 1994, about 40 rights are enumerated to children, considerate of their age and liberties. One of these rights is regarding their roles in the legal system, as prosecution of individuals under the age of 18 requires special attention due to their developmental needs as juveniles. While this set of enumerated rights has been ratified and adopted by many developing countries, the United States of America has yet to ratify them as well as adopt them as a strategy in the U.S. criminal justice system. When special attention is not placed on a juvenile in the context of the criminal justice system, it may result in the incarceration of a juvenile offender. And it is found that incarceration fails to meet the criminogenic and developmental needs of juvenile offenders, as it has a limited ability to help juveniles reach rehabilitation and reentry into society, as well as it is ineffective in cost and outcome. So what is the reality of adolescence in the U.S. criminal justice system? According to researchers, around 5% of the population in correctional facilities in developed countries is made up of youth offenders. And in the United States, children as young as 14 may be subject to adult criminal proceedings and sentencing. Many find a justification of this route to be due to punishment and deterrence in juveniles, with a small note of rehabilitation, which we will discuss later on. It is important to note, however, that juveniles are not protected by federal law when processed and incarcerated with adults. Without these protections, and when juvenile offenders are integrated into an adult system, many risks are presented to the individual. Some of these individual risks include being placed on the public record of convictions, the compulsory reporting of the conviction on future employment applications, being subject to criminal court jurisdiction for all subsequent offenses, registration in a state's sex offender registries, and of course the potential to receive an adult sentence and incarceration in adult prisons. There is also an immense emphasis placed on mental health concerns of juvenile offenders, as they typically don't receive the required treatment while incarcerated, resulting in potential suicidal ideations as well as victimization from the adult population. It is at this point that I identified diversion programs as an alternative route to prosecution of juvenile offenders. This infographic portrays the many pathways that a juvenile offender may encounter while under the criminal justice system. As you may notice, there are several areas in which a juvenile may encounter the opportunity of diversion. It is at this point that when a juvenile offender may have the opportunity to participate in a diversion program, halting their formal criminal justice proceedings. But what are diversion programs? What do they offer to juvenile offenders, and what role do they play in the criminal justice system? Diversion programs are defined as pretrial interventions to treating conduct issues and delinquency in juveniles. They are typically offered to juveniles as an alternative to formal prosecution. Participation in these programs may be sought through a court order or through voluntary participation of the juvenile, as it may limit their formal charges and reduce forms of punishment in the future. Inversely, if retaliation is taken in regard to the opportunity of joining a diversion program, it may be used as a further aggravating factor when following through with formal procedure and sentencing of an offender. Some examples of diversion programs in fruition include the deliverables of community service, attending counseling, educational classes, supervision, substance abuse treatment, residential programs, familial intervention, and teen court. These images display the successful enforcement of some of these juvenile diversion programs, including teen court, as you can see on the left, in which juvenile offenders are offered the opportunity to participate in a mock criminal trial to further gain education in their role as an offender in the criminal justice system, as well as legal stakeholders in their community. And then on the right, you can see a counseling program offered by a local community, as well as further educational classes offered to juvenile offenders. While juvenile diversion programs have been implemented by many jurisdictions in the U.S. criminal justice system, there still is the room for improvement in the application of these programs as an assistive effort to juvenile offenders. According to criminological professionals, many of the diversion programs allotted to juvenile offenders are based in the local prosecution services of their jurisdiction. This localized structure of administration allows for a greater variability of approaches used across the U.S. criminal justice system, as well as a greater risk of abuse and lack of accountability of professionals in the criminal justice system upon juvenile offenders. This may be due to the misuse of retributive-based approaches in these diversion programs, in which the juvenile offender is given a punishment based on a deservingness of the offense that they have committed. It has been found, however, that retributive-based approaches do not reduce recidivism rates in juvenile offenders. However, this is dependent upon the system that you are analyzing, as, like I said, prosecution-led diversion programs allow for greater heterogeneity of approaches utilized. In contrast to retributive-based diversion programs, restorative justice diversion programs are found to be effective at reducing juveniles' risks of reoffense, as well as increasing victim satisfaction and decreasing the costs of prosecutorial services. Another shortcoming of prosecution-led diversion programs is that most programs are limited to the case management of the juvenile offender, rarely giving credence to other treatment options that they may be entitled to. It is found, however, that programs are best implemented with the inclusion of familial interventions and restorative justice, as was mentioned before. Restorative justice may be conveyed throughout a rehabilitative framework, where each youth is assessed using valid assessment tools, and a diversion plan is formed in conjunction with the juvenile and the diversion officer. The employment of a rehabilitative framework within a diversion program is indicative of a risk-needs-responsivity approach, where the risk and needs of an offender drives the selection of an appropriate program that can address their criminogenic needs, hoping to further reduce recidivism rates as well. In my review of local services in my area, I came across many examples of diversion programs that follow principles of restorative justice, with Maricopa County being a developmental leader in rehabilitative juvenile services. Each of these programs works to educate offenders and their support systems, as well as advocate for victim restitution and establish public safety within relevant communities. I would hope that further jurisdictions turn to Maricopa County as an example for integrating diversion programs as an efficient and appropriate alternative to the prosecution of juveniles. The main focus I would like to come as a result of this presentation is the understanding that juveniles are entitled to protection under the criminal justice system, a right which requires further advocacy to establish. Secondly, diversion programs are a reasonable alternative to prosecution. However, the fashion in which these programs are operated is important. In order to achieve the desired outcome, best practices must be adopted and enforced within these programs. Lastly, retributive justice is a necessary yet ineffective response to crime. If we further aim to repair harm rather than to induce it upon offenders in the criminal justice system, we may begin to see a positive impact on juvenile delinquency. Thank you for your time and consideration in watching my presentation today.